Hello, welcome to More Yoga with me, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me today. Yeah, hope you're doing well. So today you're going to need something, either a ball or a dowel. Um, yeah, those are the two best things that we can use, unless you have like a special foot roller. Foot roller. Guess what we're getting into? Yay! The soles of the feet. I had someone requested in my public class yesterday and I didn't have any props to be able to teach with. So it was a little bit trickier, but today we get to have props. So grab whatever you can. I'm going to mostly teach with the dowel instead of the ball. The ball is kind of like a backup thing. This is just a broom handle, so you can use that. And let's get stuck into it, shall we? I'm going to sit up on a block to start with because it helps. Just release my hips. Oh, brings me up from the floor a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start to get into the fascia of the sole of the foot. So quick little, very brief little anatomy thing, right? The fascia of the sole of the foot is intimately connected with that of the calf, which is also connected with hamstring. So in theory, we're going to get through all three of these areas in order to find a little bit more release through the feet and the calves. And one of the biggest tests of that is ankle mobility. Excuse me. So how deep into a squat can you get? How far do you have to turn out your feet, right? And in fact, actually, let's all just do that. Let's just test before we do any sort of mobilization. Test your squat. I know we're not warm. This might not be pleasant, but here we go. So I am hypermobile, so don't worry about where my squat is. I might even try turning my feet in a little bit because I always turn them out. Just see, can my heels get down? They can. It's more comfortable on my ankles if my feet are a little bit more turned out, and even if my feet are a little bit wider than they are now. Right? If your heels are lifted, could be tight ankles or fascia in the calves. Anyway, that's just like a little baseline. See how your squat feels. Then we're going to do a bunch of stuff. And then at the end, we'll see how the squat feels. Okay, now let's get into the fascia of the sole of the foot. So take whatever foot you want. You could cross your legs. You could prop one foot on top of the other leg. And you're going to take fingers from the opposite hand, thread them through from the bottom. So if you have socks on, you're going to need to take your socks off to do this. And it can feel quite tight, right? Your fingers might not get all the way down to the base of the toes. That's okay. And sometimes even just putting the fingers through can be enough. But if you're with me, you can do a little bit of kind of fan work or twisting. You can point and flex. You can even take this opportunity to draw circles with your ankle. But I really like getting into the fascia. And then this position allows you to use your thumb to massage into the sole of the foot too. Right, the Achilles tendon from the calf attaches all the way underneath on the heel. So that's why I say like it's all intimately connected. All right, so that's from the bottom. Now take the same hand as the foot and come through from the top. Whew. I guess you could, in theory, use the opposite hand. You don't have to use the same hand. And it feels a little bit different coming down from the top than it does from the bottom, but same thing, just kind of mobilize, starting to open up a little bit of space. For me, this foot is way tighter than my other one. All right, and then just grab the back of the thigh and take a couple little swings. And then we'll do all that on the opposite side. So again, starting from underneath, come up in between the toes. Oh, it's a cold morning. My toes don't want to open up as much as they normally do. And you can spend a little bit of time in one position, or you can move back and forth. Again, you could use your thumb to kind of get into the arch of the foot, which can feel quite nice sometimes, or even into the balls of the foot while your fingers are still in the toes. And maybe do some circles and then release those fingers and then use the other hand. Hopefully your feet are clean enough that this isn't unpleasant for you, at least not in an odor way. It might feel unpleasant in other ways, or at least interesting. Point and flex, and oh, this side doesn't like having my fingers from the top. I usually just do it from the bottom, so it's a good reminder to me to thread from both directions. All right, and then release your hand, grab the back of the side, a couple little easy swings. Shake everything up. All right, so now we're gonna move into the dowel work. If you don't have a dowel, I can give you some options to use the ball. And if you don't have either of them, you can still do all this without props. I should have mentioned that at the start. All right, have a block handy or a pillow and your props, either your ball or your dowel or your broomstick, and then tuck your toes behind you. And try to get all 10 toes tucked. If that means that your heels have to wing out to the side, right, to get the pinky toes tucked, then don't worry about it quite so much. And then start to walk your hips back. Now your hands could stay on the floor, taking some weight the whole time, and ease into this, because this can be a lot. Maybe you come all the way up. This can be intense. I know. This can be a really great place to bring a block between your bum and your heels to give yourself a little bit of lift. It takes some of the gravity out of it. Otherwise, stay here with me. We're just going to hang out in toe stand for a few more breaths. So what we're doing, right, is getting a deep stretch into the fascia of the soles of the feet, but also a bit of compression on the front of the toes. So that might be where you're feeling most of the unpleasantness. Maybe you're feeling more of the unpleasantness in the soles of the feet. Maybe it's not unpleasant. Maybe it's just interesting. I remember the first time my yoga teacher had us do this, and I felt like my feet were breaking. So if it's, intense, don't worry about it. It can improve, right? Once I had a baby, I used to just practice sitting like this while she was in the bath, and then eventually it became kind of a normal thing to do. The last couple breaths here. All right, slowly start to come forward. Untuck your toes, and then you can tap out the tops of the feet. And then some people really like to take a counter stretch here. So tops of the feet now flat on the floor, toes untucked, and then send your weight back. This might be enough even just to release a little bit through the front of the ankles. Some people like to bring their fingertips behind them and even rock up onto the tops of the feet. That doesn't work on my body, so I'm not going to do that. But if that works for you, it can feel really nice. And then start to come forward again. Plant your hands outer shoulder width apart or wider. This is going to sound crazy, but tuck your toes and then lift your hips up and back into downward facing dog. You could pedal out the heels a little bit, pedal out, or bending one knee and then the other. So just flushing a little bit through the back of the legs. And then take a couple of moments in your downward facing dog, a couple of moments of stillness. See how it feels. And then gently lower your knees to the earth. All right. Now grab your broomstick or your dowel if you have it. If you don't, use a ball. And what we're going to do is bring the broomstick as close up to the back of the knees as you can. Again, have a block handy. Now you could have your toes untucked here as we start to roll our calves, or you could tuck the toes again. It sort of just depends on where you want to be. Your weight's going to be quite a bit more forward, so it's a bit less unpleasant, or a bit intense, a bit less intense to have the toes tucked. But the more that you're able to sit down on it, the more you're going to get the dowel into the hamstrings as well as down into the calves. But again, if this is a lot, you can bring a block between your heels. So this might just be enough for you, right? Getting quite a bit of pressure now into your calves. If you want a little bit more, you can kind of glide or rock side to side, pressing down on one's end and then the other. And this is kind of cool because it starts to cross hatch the muscle fibers and the fascia, right? So rather than just pressing into one spot, it helps get all of the fibers that are crisscrossing to move a little bit more too. Okay, and then lift up a little bit and then roll the dowel or your broomstick down a little bit more. If you're using a ball, you're probably going to have it on one side unless you have two balls. And then similar sort of thing, you could rock a little bit side to side, but you're going to have to do one leg at a time unless you have, again, two balls. Maybe you rock a little bit side to side. And then lift up a little bit, roll down a little bit, come back down. So we're going to keep doing that, right? Just rolling down every once in a while. The only place I don't want you to really press into is right on the back of the ankle at the Achilles tendon. Right, this is a blunt instrument. You can massage it with your thumbs some other time, but I just don't want you to injure yourself. All right, lift up, roll down a little bit more. Maybe you're sitting up a little bit more. You can even pull up on the bar or the dowel to get into the hamstrings a bit more. But for me, it's my calves that are wicked tight these days. I complain about summer footwear because it's really bad for the soles of the feet. Your feet have to cramp almost to keep sandals on. But also winter footwear can be kind of inflexible. And so your feet don't move as much as they might normally. And keep rolling down. We won't be here much longer, I promise. Maybe it was more intense up at the top of the knee. Maybe it's more intense in the belly of the muscle. Keep rolling down. But I even spend most of my day bare feet and barefoot, or in bare feet, and my feet are still tight. So there's no perfect solution. Last couple of moments here. Again, don't go all the way down to the Achilles. All right. Keep rolling if you want to. You can pause the video. Take the implement of destruction off to the side. Untuck your toes. Tap out the tops of the feet. Maybe take that little counter stretch of even just sitting back, or maybe you lift up the knees. And then come forward again, hands nice and wide, fingertips spread wide, tuck your toes. You know where we're going. Lift the hips up and back, downward facing dog. How does it feel now? Maybe you have a little bit more mobility here. I know for me, my heels were not touching the earth in our first downward facing dog, but now they feel pretty comfortably resting there. But again, that's not necessarily the goal of downward facing dog, right? You could pedal your heels out, getting a little bit of release into the back of the leg. All right, bend your knees, look forward. Take as many steps as you need to come into your standing forward fold at the top edge of your mat. So even standing forward fold, right, should feel like, hopefully, a release for the back of the legs. It can feel quite intense. So you can mitigate that by resting your elbows on your knees or thighs. You could clasp opposite elbows with hands. You could swing a little bit from side to side. You can always bring your hands to a block or two to bring the floor up to you. Maybe you play with bending your knees a little bit more or straightening them a little bit more. But if you have a lot of low back tension these days, try to make sure you at least have a micro bend, if not a deep bend on your knees. All right, release your hands. Bring your fingertips to your shins or blocks or the earth and inhale. Lift up partway. Exhale, let it all go. Couple more like that. And then bend your knees, tuck your chin in toward your chest, slowly start to roll up to standing. One vertebra at a time, slow as you need to go, till eventually you come all the way up. Take a couple loops of your shoulders, up, back, and down. Little wiggle, noodle, or shake out. All right, yay for standing. Grab your towel or your ball. So now we're going to get into the soles of the feet a little bit more. And I would like you to go slowly, right? Sometimes you see people doing their feet and it's just like rolling pastry dough back and forth and back and forth, but we're going to go slowly. Again, if you're using a ball instead, then use a ball. We're going to start up at the base of the toes, not even at the balls of the foot, a little bit higher up. And you can make this more intense by sending the weight forward or bending the knees a little bit more. You can back out of it by sending the weight back. We're going to do 1 foot at a time, at least to start with. And then even here, you can take a little rock from side to side. And then once you feel like you're finished one spot, roll down another centimeter or so and take maybe a little rock from side to side, see how it feels. Sometimes there are some spots that don't feel like you're getting much benefit from it. So that's okay. Roll down and find another one. If I had a thicker dowel, like actually PVC pipe or like a wooden dowel, then your foot is able to sort of roll or curve round over top of it a little bit more, whereas this is a pretty small broom handle. So I'm not getting as much benefit here as maybe I could, but I'm still feeling a lot. I'm with you right now. Again, if you want to, a little rock from side to side. Add weight, take weight off, right? Do what you need to do here. Until eventually you get down towards the heel. And then one thing I like to do when I'm right on the heel is kind of do a little bit of back and forth, just small movements, and a little bit side to side, even right onto the knife edge of the foot and the inside edge. Okay, there's a lot going on in the heel, so it's nice to get into all the different angles. And then for a few breaths, if you want to, you can do some pastry rolls of your foot. I'm just going to stay on the heel. I feel that feels better for me. All right. And then just come to standing. Eyes closed even. And I want you to just feel what you feel. Notice what you might notice from one side to the other. Even if after that short amount of time of rolling the soles of the feet, you might feel a huge difference. Okay, flick your eyelids open and switch the opposite side. Again, it doesn't matter which side you're starting on. If you're using the ball, use the ball. If you're using the broomstick or the dowel, start right up at the base of the toes. And again, maybe a little rock from side to side. And if you find an interesting spot, you can spend a little bit longer on it, right? That's as I mentioned, right? If you feel not much of anything in one location, then you roll. But if you find something really interesting, you can stay there a bit longer. And as I said at the start, this side for me is way tighter than the other side. So I'm just, breathing through it, talking through it. And then again, the closer you get to the heel, the more sort of lateral movement you can get. And then you might start to do those little rolls. Whoops. Right up onto the back of the heel even, or on the side of the foot. side to side. Again, if you want to do some pastry rolls, you can do some pastry rolls. All right. And then gently step down. And again, maybe you close your eyes and just see how you feel from one side to the other. Maybe they're more even. Maybe one side is starting to tighten up already. Hopefully they both feel pretty good. All right. And then get your dowel, your ball. On your inhale, sweep the arms up to the sky. Exhale, dive or fold down to the earth. Forward fold. So a few breaths here. How does it feel now that we've done footwork? Do you feel like you have more space, more range in your hamstring stretch, right, in your forward fold than you did before? Maybe not. And then fingertips to shins. Inhale, little partway lift. Excuse me. Exhale, let it all go. Two more. And bend your knees. Plant your hands nice and wide. Step back to downward facing dog. So again, just notice how your down dog feels. Right, your knees could be micro bent, they could be deeply bent. I don't really care actually so much about your legs, right? Usually what we look for in downward facing dog is the long upper body and strong arms. All right, bend your knees, walk your hands back to your feet. And then heel until your feet about out wider and on an angle. Toes could be off the edge of your mat. And then on your inhale, sit down into your squat, into Malasana. So again, now comparing the first squat that we did with how it feels now. Right? And again, I understand this might not be where you want to be today, so you could take your feet wider and rest your elbows on your knees or thighs. But otherwise, join me in Malasana. Make sure you're not just hanging out at the bottom here, right? There's a little lift, a little buoyancy. So if you had to stand up, you could. Can you de-weight the big toes? Rolling to the baby toe edge of the foot a little bit. How does it feel? Maybe you feel like you have more ankle mobility here. Maybe not. That's okay. All right, it's never pretty coming out of a squat unless you stand up, but we're going to sit down. So make your way, seated. And then hands behind you, take a little windshield wiper of your legs. And then plant your feet in front of you. You could tuck your tailbone and do a Pilates style roll down if you want to, but make your way down onto the mat. You could use your hands, you could use your forearms, you could roll to one side first. And then once you're down, draw your knees into your chest and take a little rock from side to side. And then reach your legs up to the sky. You could point and flex ankles or toes or just do a little circle. Or you could shake everything out, maybe add your arms. I like to do some sort of shaky after deep fascial work. I feel like it helps just flush anything that's been massaged out into the system. And then pause for a couple breaths. All right, and draw your knees back into your chest. Take your right arm out to the side. Maybe shift your hips right a little bit to start with. And then as you exhale, lower your knees to the left for a twist. We didn't get into the body very much today. It was more the torso. It was mostly lower body, but it's still nice to get a little twist. Knees could be stacked. You could take a single leg twist. You could cross the legs. This is a great place to bring a pillow or a block between your knees or underneath your knees for a little bit more support. Last breath here. All right, and then inhale, return to center. Reset your pelvis and your spine. Maybe even shift the hips left a little bit. And then exhale, lower your knees to the right. Again, as gentle or as deep of a twist as you need. This type of fascial work, if you feel like it was really beneficial for you, if you notice a lot of difference, it's the sort of thing that you could do twice, maybe even 3 times a week. And it doesn't have to be for as long as we did it today. But maybe you're watching Netflix or whatever, and you take a couple of minutes just to roll out the calves in that toe stand position. And you'll notice a big difference, particularly if you're prone to plantar fasciitis. It's a great way to keep the fascia moving. Last breath here. And then inhale, return to center. Again, reset your pelvis and your spine. And then draw your knees toward you. Take them wide out toward your shoulders or armpits. You could stay here for your happy baby, or you might kick your feet up to the sky. You could grab the backs of the thighs or somewhere along your legs, your ankles, or your feet. Sometimes even here, I like to thread my fingers in between my toes. Go where you need to go. And then release your legs and start to make your way into your final resting pose, which could be flat on your back, excuse me, legs bent or straight in Shavasana. You could rest on your side or in child's pose or a seated meditation. And there's no rush to get there. But once you have found your pose of rest, for 3 breaths, inhale through your nose and exhale, sigh your breath away. Couple more. And then continue breathing however you need to. Try to let go of your breath control, though, so you return to your natural breath. Let go of any last muscle gripping or tension, particularly in your neck or your jaw. And with each exhale, let your body melt a little bit deeper into the earth. And stay here longer if you can, 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.